The smell of overpriced wine and Beth's fake laughter filled our dining room like poison gas. I should have known something was wrong when my wife insisted on hosting this dinner party for her Instagram influencer friends. Beth Parrish, formerly Beth Morrison from small town nowhere, now fancied herself some kind of social media queen in our mid-sized Midwestern city. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Michael, could you bring out more wine? Beth called from the dining room, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she'd perfected for her followers. I grabbed another bottle of the expensive Cabernet she'd insisted we buy, money I'd earned running Parrish Electric, the contracting company I'd built from nothing with my brother Jon, 38 years old, and I was still playing waiter at my own dinner table. The dining room buzzed with conversation about follower counts and brand partnerships. Beth sat at the head of the table like some kind of queen, surrounded by her court of equally vapid friends. Kelly, her best friend and fellow influencer, was going on about some sponsored makeup campaign. "So Beth," said Amanda, another one of Beth's crew, "tell us about your husband's business again. Parrish Electric, right?" Beth's smile turned cold. "Oh, Michael's company. It's fine, I guess. He keeps the lights on." She paused for effect, then delivered the line that would haunt me. "But honestly, he's just the guy who covers the bills. That's all he's really good for." The table erupted in laughter. Not polite chuckles, but genuine, cruel laughter. These women, who lived in houses my work had wired, drove cars my money had helped buy, were laughing at me like I was some kind of joke. I stood there holding the wine bottle, feeling heat rise in my chest. Beth looked directly at me, her eyes challenging, daring me to say something. For a moment, I considered it. I could have told them about the sleepless nights building the business, the risks I'd taken, the success we'd achieved. I could have mentioned that their hostess hadn't worked a real job in 5 years. Instead, I set the wine bottle down carefully, picked up my keys from the counter, and walked out. "Michael, where are you going?" Beth called after me, but I could hear the smugness in her voice. She'd gotten exactly the reaction she wanted. I drove to Murphy's, a working-class bar downtown where electricians and contractors went to drink beer and complain about their day. The kind of place Beth would never be caught in. I ordered a whiskey and tried to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed with texts from Beth. "You're being dramatic. Come home and apologize. You embarrassed me in front of my friends." I turned off the phone and ordered another whiskey. The next morning, Beth acted like nothing had happened. She was in the kitchen making her usual Instagram-worthy breakfast, positioning everything perfectly for photos before she'd take even one bite. "Good morning, honey," she said without looking up from her phone. "I'm sorry if you felt hurt last night. I was just joking around with the girls." Felt hurt, as if my reaction was the problem, not her public humiliation. "We need to talk, Beth. Can it wait? I'm trying to get this post up while the lighting is good." I went to work instead. Parrish Electric occupied a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town. Jon and I had bought it 3 years ago when the business really took off. We employed 12 people now, handled commercial contracts across 3 counties. Mary, our office manager, looked up when I walked in. She'd been with us since the beginning, a sharp woman in her 50s who knew where all the bodies were buried. "Rough night?" she asked, noting my expression. Beth threw a dinner party. Ah. Mary had met Beth exactly once, at our Christmas party 2 years ago. She'd never asked about her again, which told me everything I needed to know about Mary's opinion of my wife. I buried myself in work, reviewing bids for a new shopping center project. But my concentration was shot. Every time I thought about Beth's words, about that laughter, my jaw clenched. Around lunch, Jon showed up. My older brother had always been the charmer of the family, smooth talker, easy smile, successful with women. He'd never married, said he was having too much fun playing the field. "Hey, Mike, you look like hell." "Thanks for the pep talk." Jon sat down across from my desk. "Beth called me this morning, said you walked out on her dinner party." "She called you?" That was interesting. Beth and Jon had never been particularly close. "She's worried about you, man. Says you've been distant lately." I studied my brother's face. Jon was good at reading people, but he'd never been good at hiding things from me. Something was off. "I'm fine, Jon. Just tired of being treated like an ATM in my own house." Marriage is hard, Mike. Maybe you guys should try counseling or something." The concern in his voice sounded genuine, but there was something else there, something that made my instincts prickle. That evening, I came home to find Beth in the living room with her laptop, editing photos from the night before. She'd cropped me out of every single shot where I'd appeared. "How was work?" she asked, still not looking up. "Fine." Jon stopped by. Now she looked up, and I caught something, a flash of panic, cross her face before she composed herself. "Oh, what did he want?" "Said you called him, told him about last night." "I was just concerned about you, Michael. You've been so moody lately." I went upstairs to change clothes and found Beth's phone charging on the nightstand. She'd left it unlocked, unusual for someone who guarded her social media presence so carefully. I shouldn't have looked. Part of me knew that once I opened that door, there'd be no going back. But something Jon had said, something about Beth's reaction when I mentioned his name, made me pick up the phone. The text thread with Jon was right there at the top. "Beth." He walked out. "I think he's getting suspicious." Jon. "Just stick to the plan. We're too close now to back out." Beth. "What if he finds out before we're ready?" Jon. "He won't. Mike's always been too trusting. That's his weakness." My hands shook as I scrolled up, reading weeks of messages between my wife and my brother. Plans for after the divorce. Discussions about the business, about assets, about custody of our daughters. And then I found the photos. Pictures of Beth and Jon together. Intimate photos that made my stomach turn. My wife and my brother planning my destruction while I worked 60-hour weeks to support the lifestyle that gave them time to betray me. "Michael," Beth's voice from downstairs. "Dinner's ready." I set the phone down carefully, exactly where I'd found it. My hands were steady now, my mind clear for the first time in months. "Coming, honey," I called back. I had work to do. I played the part of the oblivious husband for 2 weeks. I smiled at Beth's fake affection, made small talk with Jon about business, and acted like everything was normal while I quietly gathered intelligence. The first thing I did was secure our finances. I moved money from our joint accounts into accounts Beth didn't know about. Legally, since they were business accounts I'd always controlled. I documented every expense she'd made, every dollar she'd spent on her influencer lifestyle. Mary helped without asking questions. She'd always been loyal to me, and I suspected she'd never trusted Jon completely. When I asked her to pull together financial records, she had them ready the next day. "Jon's been taking larger draws from the business lately," she mentioned casually. "Might want to keep an eye on that." I reviewed the records that night. Jon had been siphoning money for months, probably to fund his lifestyle while he planned to steal my wife and my company. The next phase was gathering dirt. I hired a private investigator, a former cop named Dave who'd done some security work for our bigger commercial jobs. I didn't tell him everything, just asked him to document Beth and Jon's activities. Dave's first report arrived 3 days later. Photos of Beth and Jon at expensive restaurants, at Jon's apartment, at hotels outside of town, a complete timeline of their affair, documented with the kind of detail that would hold up in court. But I wasn't planning on court. I had something else in mind. Beth's Instagram empire was built on her image as a devoted wife and mother. She posted constantly about family values and marriage goals, using photos of our daughters and our home to sell her brand of domestic perfection. Her followers ate it up. She had nearly 50,000 of them now. I started creating fake accounts, building a network of anonymous profiles that looked real enough to pass casual inspection. It took time, but I was patient. I engaged with Beth's content, built relationships with her most devoted followers, established credibility. Meanwhile, I played the perfect husband. I complimented her posts, brought her flowers, even suggested we take a family vacation. Beth seemed relieved that I was back to normal, which only confirmed how little she actually knew me. Jon was harder to read. My brother had always been paranoid, and I caught him watching me sometimes when he thought I wasn't looking. But he was also arrogant, convinced he was smarter than everyone else. That would be his downfall. The breakthrough came when I befriended Logan, Beth's personal trainer. She'd been working out with him 3 times a week for months, and I'd always assumed he was part of her affair network. But when I approached him at the gym, I discovered something interesting. Logan thought I knew about Beth and Jon. He assumed I was okay with it. "Your wife's really something, man," he said after I'd bought him a beer. "And your brother's a lucky guy. Not every husband would be so cool about the whole situation." I kept my expression neutral. "What can I say? Modern marriage, right?" Logan laughed. "Exactly. Beth said you guys had an understanding. Very mature. An understanding. Beth had told people I was okay with her affair, that we had some kind of open marriage arrangement. The lie was so brazen, so calculated, that I almost admired it. She's been good for business, too," Logan continued. "All her Instagram friends have started training here. I should probably give you and Jon a commission?" "Jon trains here, too?" "Oh, yeah, he's here all the time. Usually comes in right after Beth's sessions." Logan winked. "Convenient timing, if you know what I mean." I knew exactly what he meant. That night, I sat in my home office, the same office where I'd built Parish Electric from nothing, and planned the destruction of everyone who'd betrayed me. It wasn't going to be quick, and it wasn't going to be clean, but it was going to be thorough. Beth wanted to play social media games? I'd give her a game she'd never forget. Jon thought he was smarter than his little brother. He was about to learn otherwise, and Logan thought he was just an innocent bystander. He was about to discover there were no innocent bystanders in this war. I opened my laptop and began typing the first post that would bring their world crashing down. The first shot was fired on a Tuesday morning. Beth had posted one of her typical blessed wife and mother photos, her and the girls at breakfast, with a caption about how family comes first in our household. I responded from one of my fake accounts. Interesting family values. Does this include your Tuesday and Thursday workout sessions with your brother-in-law? The comment was subtle enough that most people would dismiss it as trolling, but specific enough that Beth would know someone was watching. I watched her engagement numbers that day, saw her frantically deleting comments and blocking accounts. But that was just the opening move. Over the next week, I systematically destroyed Beth's online reputation. I released information slowly, through different fake accounts, making it look like multiple sources were exposing her lies. Photos of her and Jon at restaurants while she'd claimed to be at business meetings. Screenshots of her private messages to followers, where she'd trash-talked other influencers. Evidence of her fake product reviews and undisclosed sponsorship deals. The influencer community turned on her like sharks smelling blood. These people had built their brands on authenticity and trust, and Beth's lies made them all look bad. Former friends started distancing themselves, brands pulled sponsorship deals, and her follower count began dropping by hundreds per day. But Beth still didn't know it was me. She suspected trolls, maybe jealous competitors. She had no idea her loving husband was orchestrating her destruction from the home office 20 feet away. Jon was getting nervous, though. I could see it in his behavior at work, constantly checking his phone, jumping whenever someone walked into his office. He'd built his lifestyle on the assumption that he'd soon control Parish Electric, but now his sugar mama's income was evaporating. "You seem stressed," I mentioned during one of our daily meetings. "Just tired, haven't been sleeping well." "Maybe you should cut back on the late-night activities." Jon's head snapped up. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, man. Just saying you look exhausted." But the seed was planted. Jon was smart enough to know that comment wasn't random. The real escalation came when I decided to involve their friends. Beth and Jon had been careful to keep their affair secret from most people, but they'd gotten sloppy with a few close confidants. I identified these people through social media analysis and private investigation, then systematically turned them against my targets. Kelly, Beth's best friend and fellow influencer, was the first to flip. She'd been covering for Beth's affair, but when her own brand started suffering from association with the scandal, she decided to save herself. Kelly's tell-all post about Beth's fake marriage and secret affair got 30,000 shares in the first day. She included screenshots of messages where Beth had mocked her pathetic husband and bragged about manipulating me financially. The post ended with Kelly's declaration that she could no longer support someone who built her brand on lies and betrayal. Beth called me at work, sobbing. "Michael, you have to see what Kelly posted about me. She's lying about everything. She's trying to destroy me." "What did she say?" She's claiming I'm having an affair with Jon. It's completely insane." The fake shock in her voice was almost impressive. "That is insane, Beth. Why would she make up something like that?" "I don't know. Maybe she's jealous of my success. Maybe someone paid her to lie about me." "Who would do something like that?" "I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And when I do, they're going to pay for this." I almost smiled. Beth still thought she was the hunter, not realizing she'd become the prey. That evening, Jon came to the house. He and Beth huddled in the living room, speaking in low voices while I made dinner. I could hear fragments of their conversation, damage control, legal action, find out who's behind this. At dinner, they both acted like nothing was wrong. Jon made small talk about a new commercial contract. Beth asked about my day. Our daughters, Beau and Bree, seemed to sense the tension but didn't say anything. After Jon left, Beth tried to initiate intimacy for the first time in months. I played along, letting her think her manipulation was working while I planned the next phase of her destruction. Because this was just the beginning. I'd destroyed her online reputation and turned her friends against her, but I hadn't touched the real foundation of her power, the money and lifestyle I'd provided, and the family image she'd used to build her brand. It was time to take those away, too. The board meeting was scheduled for a Thursday morning. Parish Electric had grown large enough to require formal corporate governance, which meant Jon and I each held 45% of the company, with the remaining 10% held by our mother as a tiebreaker. Mom had always been a tough woman, raised during the Depression, suspicious of anyone who hadn't earned their way in life. She'd never warmed to Beth, and she'd been watching John's recent behavior with increasing disapproval. Jonathan's been getting too big for his britches, she'd mentioned to me the week before, spending money like it grows on trees, acting like he owns the whole company. He's always been the flashy one, Mom. Flashy is one thing, irresponsible is another. I've been looking at the books, Michael. Your brother's been taking advances against profits that don't exist yet. I'd planted that seed weeks earlier, making sure Mom saw the financial discrepancies I'd documented. She'd done the math herself and reached the obvious conclusion. John was bleeding the company dry to fund his lifestyle. The morning of the meeting, I arrived early and set up a presentation. Financial records, expense reports, documentation of John's excessive draws against company profits. Everything was legitimate, legally obtained, and damning. John walked in 15 minutes late, looking confident. He'd probably spent the morning with Beth, planning their next move in what they thought was their campaign against anonymous internet trolls. "Morning, Mike. Mom." He kissed our mother's cheek and sat down across from me. "What's this meeting about again?" "Financial oversight," I said. "I've been reviewing our books, and I found some discrepancies I wanted to discuss." Mom opened the folder I'd prepared for her. Her expression grew darker as she reviewed the documents. "Jonathan," she said in the voice that had terrified me and John as children, "would you like to explain why you've taken $80,000 in advances over the past 6 months?" John's confidence evaporated. "Those weren't advances, Mom. Those were legitimate business expenses." "Legitimate business expenses?" I opened my laptop and connected it to the conference room projector. Let's review some of these expenses. The first slide showed John's credit card statements. Restaurants, hotels, expensive gifts, all charged to the company as client entertainment or business development. This restaurant bill for $400. Who was the client? John shifted in his seat. "I don't remember every specific meal, Mike." "That's interesting, because this was on a Tuesday afternoon. We don't have any clients in the system for that day, and the reservation was made under your personal name for 2 people. The next slide showed more evidence. Hotel rooms booked during times when John claimed to be working, expensive jewelry purchases that had somehow become office supplies on the company books. Mom's face was stone. "Jonathan Michael Parrish, are you stealing from this company?" "I'm not stealing anything. I've been working just as hard as Mike to build this business." "Working hard?" I clicked to the next slide. John's attendance records, client meeting schedules, project oversight reports. "You've missed 30% of your scheduled client meetings in the past 3 months. You've delegated most of your project management to subordinates, and you've been taking money out of the company at twice the rate we agreed on. You're making this sound worse than it is." "Am I?" I clicked to the final slide, a projection of the company's financial future if John's spending continued. "At your current rate of draws, we'll be insolvent within 18 months. We'll have to lay off half our employees and default on our commercial contracts." Mom closed the folder and looked at John with disappointment that cut deeper than any anger could have. "You're removed from day-to-day operations, effective immediately," she said. "Michael will assume full management control of the company. You'll receive your contracted percentage of actual profits, not advances against projected earnings." "Mom, you can't do this. I helped build this company too." "You helped spend it into the ground. Michael's been carrying your weight for months, and I won't let you destroy what he's built." John looked at me with something approaching hatred. "This is about Beth, isn't it? You know about us, and this is your revenge." The admission hung in the air like smoke. Mom's eyes widened, and I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. "I don't know what you're talking about, John. This is about business, not personal relationships." "Don't play dumb, Mike. I know you've figured it out." "Figured what out?" John realized his mistake too late. He'd just confessed to an affair with my wife in front of our mother, without any prompting from me. Mom stood up slowly. "Get out of my sight, Jonathan. And don't come back until you're ready to act like a man instead of a spoiled child." John left without another word, but I could see the wheels turning in his head. He was finally realizing that his little brother might not be as naive as he'd assumed. That evening, Beth was waiting for me when I got home. She'd been crying, her makeup smeared, her usual Instagram-perfect appearance destroyed. John told me what happened at the meeting. "It was a business decision, Beth. John was bleeding money from the company." "He also said you know about us." I looked at my wife, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She was still beautiful, but I could see the calculation behind her eyes, the cold ambition that had driven her to betray everything we'd built together. I know a lot of things, Beth. So what happens now? Now? Now you get to find out what happens when you cross the wrong electrician. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. 3 days after the board meeting, I came home to find Beth, Jon, and Logan waiting in my living room. They'd let themselves in using Beth's key, and they looked like they were ready for war. "We need to talk," Beth said as I walked through the door. "About what?" "About ending this game you've been playing." I set down my briefcase and looked at the three of them. Beth sat in my favorite chair like she owned it. Jon paced by the window like a caged animal, and Logan stood behind the couch trying to look intimidating. What game would that be? Jon stopped pacing. "Cut the shit, Mike. We know you've been behind the social media attacks. We know you manipulated Mom into cutting me out of the business, and we know you've been having us followed. Those are some serious accusations, Jon. Do you have any proof?" "We don't need proof," Beth said. "We know it's you. The question is what you want to make this stop." I sat down on the couch across from them, taking my time to get comfortable. "I want a lot of things, Beth. I want a wife who doesn't mock me in front of her friends. I want a brother who doesn't steal from our family business. I want to not find out about my wife's affair through text messages on her phone." Logan stepped forward. "Look, man, this doesn't have to get ugly. We can work something out." I looked at him with genuine curiosity. "What exactly is your role in this, Logan? Are you Beth's other boyfriend, or just Jon's workout buddy?" "I'm trying to help resolve this situation before it gets out of hand." "Out of hand?" I laughed. "Logan, I think you misunderstand the situation. This isn't a negotiation. This is me explaining to my wife and brother what their lives are going to look like from now on." Beth's mask slipped. "You can't destroy us, Michael. We have lawyers. We have evidence of your harassment campaign. We can make your life hell." "You already made my life hell, Beth. The difference is, I'm better at it than you are." I pulled out my phone and opened an app I'd installed weeks earlier. Did you know that modern security systems can be controlled remotely? I had our house rewired last month while you were at your workout sessions." I pressed a button, and every screen in the house lit up. TVs, tablets, even Beth's laptop. They all showed the same thing, a compilation video of Beth and Jon's affair, complete with audio from their planning sessions and screenshots of their text messages. "The neighbors can see this too," I mentioned casually. "I may have accidentally connected to their Wi-Fi networks while testing the system." Beth's face went white. "Turn it off." "Why? I thought you liked being on camera. Isn't this what influencers do? Share their authentic lives with their audience?" Jon moved toward me, but I held up a hand. "I wouldn't, Jon. The system is also recording everything right now. Any assault charges would be very well documented." Logan was staring at one of the screens, watching himself appear in several of the photos with Beth. "You said you weren't recording anything at the gym?" "I lied," Beth snapped. "God, you're stupid." "Actually," I said, "Beth didn't record those." "I did. Logan, did you know that your gym's security system has some serious vulnerabilities? Very easy to hack if you know what you're doing." Logan's face went through several color changes as he realized his own business was compromised. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "Beth, you're going to move out of this house tonight. You can take your clothes and your car, but everything else stays here. The house is in my name, bought with money I earned. You can't kick me out. I have rights. You have the right to file for divorce, which I'm sure you'll do. But you don't have the right to live in my house while you're sleeping with my brother." Jon found his voice. "And what about me?" "You're out of the company, Jon. Mom made that clear. You can keep your percentage of actual profits, but your days of treating Parish Electric like your personal bank account are over. We can fight this, Mike. We can make this messy for everyone." I pressed another button on my phone. This time, the screens showed financial records. Jon's embezzlement, Beth's undisclosed sponsorship deals, Logan's tax evasion at the gym. "You can try to make it messy," I agreed, "but I've been preparing for this conversation for weeks. Every piece of evidence I have is legally obtained and thoroughly documented. Can you say the same about your side?" The room fell silent except for the audio from the screens, which was playing Beth's voice explaining to Jon how pathetic and clueless her husband was. Beth stood up abruptly. "Fine. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. I'll take you for everything in the divorce. I'll get custody of the girls, I'll get half the business, I'll get alimony that'll keep me comfortable for the rest of my life." "With what lawyer, Beth? The good ones require retainers, and your income stream just dried up. The cheap ones won't be able to handle the evidence I've compiled." "I have friends. I have support." "You had friends. Most of them have been distancing themselves from you since Kelly's post went viral. As for support, I gestured at Jon and Logan. These two are about to have their own legal problems to worry about. Logan was already heading for the door. I'm not part of this anymore. Beth, don't call me. Jon, don't come to the gym. Logan, wait, Beth called after him, but he was gone. Jon looked at me with something that might have been respect mixed with fear. You really planned all this out, didn't you? I'm an electrician, Jon. I'm good at systems. I understand how circuits work, how power flows, what happens when you overload the network. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our neighbors' houses, where I knew they were watching the show on their own screens. You and Beth overloaded the system. Now you get to find out what happens when the circuit breaker trips. Beth was crying now, but they were angry tears, not sad ones. You bastard! You manipulative bastard! I learned from the best, honey. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. This isn't over, Michael. Yes, it is. Jon lingered for a moment, looking around the house where we'd had family dinners, where we'd planned the business that had made us both successful. I'm sorry, Mike. I know that doesn't mean much now, but I am sorry. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. He nodded and followed Beth out the door. I sat alone in my living room, listening to the sound of their cars driving away, watching the screens cycle through the evidence of their betrayal. In a few hours, Bew and Bree would come home from their after-school activities, and I'd have to explain why their mother wouldn't be living here anymore. But for now, I just sat in the quiet house I'd built with my own hands, watching the system I'd designed do exactly what I'd programmed it to do. The power was back on, and my enemies were out of business. 3 months later, Beth's divorce lawyer, a bottom-tier attorney who was the only one willing to take her case without a substantial retainer, sat across from me and my legal team in a downtown conference room. My client is willing to accept a settlement, he said, shuffling through papers that looked hastily prepared. Beth sat next to him, a shadow of her former self. Her Instagram account had been permanently suspended after multiple violations of their terms of service. The influencer community had completely ostracized her. She was living in a studio apartment across town, working at a retail job for the first time in years. What kind of settlement? My lawyer asked. $50,000 in joint custody of the children. I almost laughed. Counteroffer, nothing, and supervised visitation every other weekend. Beth's lawyer looked uncomfortable. Mr. Parrish, your wife has rights under state law. My wife committed adultery with my business partner and documented it extensively on social media. She used our family home and children as props for a fraudulent online business. She publicly humiliated me and attempted to steal assets from my company. I slid a folder across the table. This is a summary of the evidence we'll present if this goes to trial. The lawyer opened the folder and his face went pale. Photos, financial records, social media screenshots, testimony from witnesses, everything needed to destroy Beth completely in a public courtroom. We'll need time to review this. You have 1 hour. After that, the offer expires and we go to trial. They took 45 minutes. Beth signed the papers without looking at me, her signature shaky on the documents that ended our marriage and gave me everything I'd asked for. Full custody of our daughters, the house, the business, and no alimony. As she left the conference room, she finally looked back at me. I hope you're happy, Michael. I'm satisfied, Beth. That's better than happy. Jon's fate was even more complete. The financial evidence I'd compiled led to a full audit of Parrish Electric, which revealed the extent of his embezzlement. He avoided criminal charges by agreeing to pay back everything he'd stolen, which meant selling his condo, his car, and most of his possessions. He left town 6 months after the confrontation, taking a job with a small electrical contractor in another state. Before he left, he came to see me one last time. I know you'll never forgive me, he said, standing in the office that had once been ours. You're right. But I want you to know that I never meant for it to go this far. It started as just, excitement, the thrill of something secret. But Beth, she had bigger plans. She always did. She was going to leave you anyway, Mike, with or without me. She told me she'd been planning it for over a year. I looked at my brother, my former brother, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Then I guess it's good that I found out when I did. He nodded and walked out of my life forever. Logan's gym went bankrupt within 2 months. The tax evasion evidence I'd uncovered led to an IRS audit that revealed years of unreported income. His business license was revoked, his assets seized, and his reputation in the fitness community destroyed. He tried to blame Beth for everything, claiming she'd manipulated him into the tax scheme, but the evidence showed he'd been cheating on his taxes long before he met my wife. As for me, I rebuilt my life exactly the way I wanted it. Parish Electric thrived under my sole leadership, growing into the largest electrical contractor in the region. I hired new people to replace Jon, promoted Mary to vice president, and established a corporate culture based on loyalty and competence rather than family connections. Beau and Bree adjusted to the new reality better than I'd expected. They were old enough to understand that their mother had made choices that destroyed our family, and young enough to adapt to our new life together. I made sure they maintained a relationship with Beth, but on my terms and my schedule. The house felt different without Beth's constant social media performance and Jon's regular visits. It was quieter, more peaceful. I could work in my home office without listening to fake laughter from the dining room, could eat dinner without wondering what my wife was really thinking behind her smile. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was working late in my office when Bree knocked on the door. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Are you happier now, without Mom and Uncle Jon?" I looked at my 13-year-old daughter, so serious and thoughtful, and realized she'd been watching our family drama more carefully than I'd given her credit for. "I'm not happier, Bree, but I'm more honest, and sometimes that's more important than being happy." She nodded like she understood, kissed my forehead, and went back to her homework. I returned to my work, reviewing plans for a new commercial complex that would employ half the electricians in the city. Outside, snow was beginning to fall, covering the city in clean white silence. My phone buzzed with a text from Mary. "Tomorrow's client meeting moved to 2 p.m. Also, Beth's Instagram account is trying to make a comeback. Thought you should know." I deleted the message without responding. Beth's attempts to rebuild her online presence were irrelevant to me now. She was part of my past, a problem I'd solved completely and permanently. I finished my work, turned off the lights, and went upstairs to check on my daughters. They were both asleep, safe in the house I'd built, protected by the systems I'd put in place. In my bedroom, I looked out the window at the city spread below. Thousands of buildings wired by Parish Electric. Thousands of families whose lives were a little easier because of the work I'd done. I'd been betrayed by the people closest to me, humiliated and manipulated by those who should have loved me most. But I'd survived it, overcome it, and emerged stronger than before. The circuit had been overloaded, the system had failed, but I'd rewired everything from scratch. Now the power flowed exactly where I wanted it to go. I turned off the lights and went to sleep, satisfied with the knowledge that justice had been served and balance had been restored. Some people might call what I did revenge. I preferred to think of it as quality control. After all, I was an electrician. It was my job to make sure the system worked properly, and now it did.